So good morning, everybody. This is November the 8th. This is the day to vote. So if you haven't already voted, I hope everybody will go out and vote their choices. It's been really rainy here. So I hope when I get out there, I'm going to be good. It's going to be okay. Okay. And I just want to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on the YouTube channel. I'm able to do something else that is kind of neat. It takes me some time to process the video to get it up on YouTube. And so what I am allowed to do, and I like to do, is to make the video available on Zoom. There is a way that you can share the video right from Zoom for a short period of time. So what I like to do is I like to set it up for a 7-day review, and you can watch it there, and that gives me time to get it on the YouTube channel. And it's easy to share the link with anybody else that you feel that needs to see what the topic that we're talking about, whatever that is. Okay. Just a couple of slides to get started. There is a chat function. Please note there's a toolbar at the bottom of your screen. There's chat, and if you click on it and it pops up, if you can get technical support from Alan Katsura. So you choose chat, and then you choose who you send the chat to, and you can send them a message, and you can say, how do you do this? How do you do that? Or anytime you're having any kinds of problems. If worst comes to worst, you could use the raise the hand feature that's located in reactions, and we can get you some help. This is a disclaimer that HLAA does not endorse any single product or service. This meeting is intended to provide information, education, and support. I do want to mention Caption Call, however, because they are a sponsor for our meetings, and they actually pay for our captioner, which is the bulk of a good part of our expenses, and they've been doing it for years. And so I don't mind giving them a plug. There are other companies, but since they're the ones that actually sponsor our meetings, I have to give them some attention. So they provide landline phones, and they provide captions for your iPhone and your Android. Actually, it's both. And if you have an iPad, they can provide you with captions, a telephone number and captions for your iPad, which is great if you're traveling and you want to have nice big captions in your hotel or motel room or visiting with family. So something to explore. And just so you know that the Mission Viejo Chapter is a 501c3. So that means it's a tax-exempt organization, and any donations that you make to the chapter might be tax deductible depending on your tax situation. And we're all volunteer. No one receives any compensation of any kind. And we depend on your donations for support. And there is a donation button online at www.HLAAMV.org, where you can send us a donation. And so that's that. So I am the president of the HLAA chapter, Mission Viejo, and my email address is Tony, trying to make it simple, Tony with an I, at HLAAMV.org. So drop me a line if you have a question or an issue, if you need support of some kind. Please do that. We have our website, HLAAMV.org. We also have a Twitter account, and we're on Facebook. So look for us there. And I don't do a whole lot on there, but okay. And I think I just went through that whole thing thinking that you were seeing my slides and you weren't. So I'm sorry. Totally messed up. Totally messed up. Okay, well, it's the rainy day, you know. Okay. Okay, I don't have good control of that. I am going to share this. I just have a very short. Okay, so today's presentation is going to be purchasing a hearing aid, a consumer checklist, and I am the presenter. And I know I see some faces, I see some names that I'm not familiar with, so I thought I might tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Tony Berrient, president of the chapter, and my history is that I go all the way back with this organization to 1999. I became, shortly after joining, I became the president of the Orange County chapter of SHHH, which was Self-Help for Hard of Hearing People. And Self-Help for Hard of Hearing People changed their name in about 2003, 2004 to the Hearing Loss Association of America. So my involvement with all of that is that as the president of the chapter, the executive director for Self-Help for Hard of Hearing People visited California, and I took them on a tour. I took them to Ameriphone, which was a hard of hearing telephone manufacturing company in Garden Grove, and we went out to lunch with the president. Anyway, so I got to know the executive director, and they got to know me. About 3 months later, I received an invitation to join the company, join the organization, and it would require that I move to Maryland. And there was a lot of thinking about it, and then I decided I was going to do that. So I moved to Maryland, and my job was to be the director of member services. And then there was some layoffs, and they added to my job that I would be the director of member services and chapter development. So that means I was in charge of the membership and I was in charge of chapters. I lived in Maryland for 9 years, and in the course of all of that time, I handled a variety of jobs. I was the network administrator. I took care of the servers, and I maintained the servers, and I took care of like 12 employee computers, keeping them updated and training them and handling problems. So I did a lot. And after 9 years, I sort of burned out and I retired and came back home to California. I didn't have any family in Maryland. And so I moved back here. I think I'm going to stop sharing that. Okay. I got involved when I moved into Laguna Woods here with the Hearing Impaired Club, HIP, the Hearing Impaired Club. And I was not fond of that name because I really don't want to be thought of in the light of impaired. And there was a lot of talk amongst hard of hearing people that they didn't like that either. So the president and the founder of HIP retired, and I took it over and we named it the Hearing Well Club because I thought that was a little bit more positive. Okay, I forgot to tell my mother that this was meeting day. Sorry. So anyway, I forgot where I was. Hold on just a second. Hey, Mom, I'm in the middle of my meeting. Can I call you afterwards? Okay, bye-bye. I'm sorry for that. My mother is 95 years old.
That's okay. Tony, you were talking about how you changed the name of the group.
Yeah, okay. Change the name of the group. Thank you. Well, anyway, so that's my mom, and she may call again because she forgets that what I tell her. So, okay, here we go. All right. So we changed the name of the group, and we've been having this chapter. It morphed into, we merged with the Hearing Loss Association of America, which was really the perfect and most ideal thing to do. And in Mission Viejo, when the Mission Viejo leadership retired. So here we are. And since the pandemic, we've been having our meetings online. And let me get rid of this. Okay. We've been having our meetings online, and for right now, that is sort of the way it's going to go. So, okay. Now we're going to get into, so that's, and I am not a professional. I am much like you. I'm a person with a hearing loss. I started having hearing loss when I was in my 40s. In my 50s, I really got desperate for some help because I was having problems on the job. And that was a real serious problem. So when I'm standing here in front of you, what I want you to know is that I'm not selling anything. I have, because of my relationship and association with the Hearing Loss Association, all the conventions and workshops that I have either produced or attended, I have a lot of information, and I can help people. I can coach them through some of their issues and point them in the right direction when they need professional help. So, but now let's talk about purchasing a hearing aid. And I'm going to share. And this is a checklist, and I will email everybody a copy of this checklist. This was created by the Hearing Loss Association of America. It's a little small. That's why I want to send it to you. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger here. There we go. So we're going to go through the checklist. I have things based on my experience I would like to add, and I would like to amplify some other items. So, but we'll just use this as a basis for our discussion today. Before you even go in for testing, you want to choose a provider. So where do you go to find a hearing healthcare provider? And a lot of people, what they do is they depend on their primary care physician, or they go to an ENT, ear, nose, and throat doctor, and those are good places to start. But I also want to suggest that people here in the Mission Viejo chapter have a wealth of experience by now, many of them, and you can ask them, who do they see, where do they go, talk to family, talk to friends, and find somebody who's, gotten good points and satisfied customers. There are two choices in California. You can go to a licensed audiology or a licensed hearing aid dispenser. Now, an audiologist must have, if they've been grandfathered in, a 4-year degree and with an emphasis, obviously, in health science, audiology, and in most recent years, you have to have 8 years of education in order to be a licensed audiologist. So a hearing aid dispenser is licensed. There's no education requirement other than they have to be a high school graduate. They do have to have some training. They have to pass the test. And for the most part, you can depend on them to do pure tone tests. And I'm going to get into the testing shortly here. Pure tone tests, which really are designed to purchase hearing aids. So there's no diagnostic testing. So the testing, there's many kinds of testing that I just mentioned, pure tones, but there's also diagnostic testings. There's also something called speech in noise testing. And Anne Mundell-Noel is visiting with us here at our meeting. She is our audiology advisor, and frequently you can contact her with little questions, and she's happy to help. So so I'm going to ask her to inject comments as I go along, because okay, an audiologist has either a master's degree or a doctorate degree. Correct. And thank you for clarifying that. So there are a variety of diagnostic tests that audiologists are trained to do. I just want you to know that not all audiologists practice best practices. So there is equipment involved. It's expensive, it's time consuming, and they don't get paid or reimbursed for that through any kind of insurance company. So many professionals don't do those tests. So it really does, it provides for a better outcome if you do have those tests. And it's easier to select the correct hearing aid for you. The more intimately involved the audiologist is about with your hearing loss specifically. So I do recommend a full service provider that will do speech and noise tests And I also want to talk to you on the dispensing end about real ear tests. So, and you want somebody that is provides what I call best practices. So they will do pure tone tests and speech reception. I can't even read my own writing here. Acoustic, they'll test for acoustic tumors, middle ear issues, auditory processing problems, and so forth. So that is a best practices audiologist. They get their background is in medicine in their training, 6-7 years of college, and so they're really ideally set up to diagnose and prescribe for your hearing loss. Okay, so let's look at the testing. You want to be sure that you know whether you're getting a hearing screening or a full hearing exam. So maybe Anne, could you describe the difference for us?
Sure. Just to kind of clarify what Tony was saying there is that as an audiologist with a master's degree or a doctorate degree, we are not an MD. We're not a medical doctor. That is an ear, nose, throat doctor, right, or an otolaryngologist. So that is the medical doctor. Underneath them is the audiologist with the master's or doctorate degree, and we can diagnose hearing loss. We can assess for an acoustic neuroma or tumor, balance issues, but we don't directly treat those, but we can make the referrals for those. So in 2007, our profession went from being a master's degree, which is what I have, versus a doctorate degree, which is now required. So in 2007, the reason that we went from an audiologist to from a master's to a doctorate degree was to try to get Medicare to help pay for hearing tests and hearing aids. And here we are 15 years later, and the answer is still zero. So just know there is a reason that as audiologists, you should get a different experience than you should from a hearing aid dispenser. An audiologist is coming in and can help diagnose and test and refer for all kinds of hearing issues and disorders. A hearing aid dispenser is only allowed to test for the purpose of fitting a hearing aid. So there's a big difference between the two. And so it depends what you're looking for as to where you want to start with your hearing care. As far as the testing is concerned, an audiologist usually charges for a hearing test because we bill insurance for a hearing test. So we cannot give away something free that we bill insurance for. So you're getting a different kind of testing from an audiologist than you are a dispenser. That's why dispensers can give away free hearing tests and audiologists can't. They're two totally different backgrounds of knowledge, and that's kind of the premise of the free test versus the charging of the test. As far as the overall test, you might get very similar information from a dispenser as you do from an audiologist if an audiologist is doing just basic beeps and speech testing. So an audiologist should go further and do speech and noise testing and be more comprehensive in their counseling.
Thank you, Anne. Okay.
Any questions with that?
Looks like we're good. Okay. So yeah, so the questions, were you charged for the examination? If you saw a hearing aid dispenser, there would be no charge. So after the testing, were you told what type of hearing loss you have? And given an explanation of it. And was it explained why you can sometimes hear what is being said, but you don't always understand? And I think that we, as people with hearing loss, have this issue of hearing, but not understanding. Okay. Kent, you have a question. Ken?
Yes. Not still a question, but a comment in terms of hearing aid dispensers. And in terms of, we were actually required by the FDA to do some screening questions as far as referring people to doctors. So it's not like you don't get any of that from a hearing aid dispenser. We can do speech and noise, which very few people do, including audiologists and hearing aid dispensers, but we can both do that kind of thing as far as speech and noise. I think the biggest issue in terms of hearing aids is they're very, very technical now in terms of doing the adjustment and getting them precisely adjusted to your hearing loss. It takes some very specific computer knowledge. And I think that there are people in both areas, in both hearing aid dispensing and in audiology, who don't have a good grasp on the computer and the computer end of it to do a good job adjusting. And there's good people in both ends that do have that knowledge and that grasp of computing and the technical part of getting a hearing aid properly fit. It has to be fit. It's very important to fit it in noise. That's one thing I must agree with 1,000%. If you get someone hearing great in quiet, and when it's quiet, you don't have any idea what they're going to do as soon as they walk into a restaurant or a family gathering. So there are people both in hearing aid dispensing and in audiologists that do great jobs, and there's people that do so-so jobs because they don't do all the things that you need to do. They're time consuming. I agree. The extra things we do are time consuming, and a lot of places aren't interested in the time and the people they're working with, as opposed to people that put in that time because that's the right thing to do to get the hearing aids adjusted properly. So just trying to put some 2 cents in for hearing aid dispensing, not being quite as biased to one end. Yes, there's a lot of clinical that an audiologist can do as far as getting them adjusted properly to your hearing loss. That can be done by both an audiologist and a hearing aid dispenser.
Thank you, Ken. And you're absolutely right. Hearing aid dispensers can do a variety of tests, but just like some audiologists, they may not. And maybe for the reason that Ken suggests, they're just not as technical oriented. So that's a possibility. But if you are if you have a severe to profound hearing loss, I do recommend personally, because I am a person with a profound hearing loss, that you need all the testing that is available to narrow in on just the right type of hearing aid amplification that is available. And the testing that is provided with that extra testing, that other diagnostic testing, is really important. And I do want to say too, when you're testing, be sure to have your earwax checked. So it's possible to get an an earwax check, and you find out that you have a significant amount of hearing earwax. And if that's the case, you don't want to get hearing aids, and you don't want to proceed with a hearing test until you clear the earwax. So, and it's best done in the office of an ENT, otolaryngologist, a medical professional. And it's just amazing how much different hearing is when you get that excessive wax out of there. So, so much for, I wanted to add that for testing. So were you told after the testing what a hearing aid can and cannot do for you? So that is something that you should be sure to ask before you leave the exam room, and get that answered. And also, were you told about any assistive technology that might be beneficial? There are people that have something called a pocket talker, where it is it looks like a little transistor radio. It's just an amplification device with an extended microphone, and they work great in the doctor's office. They work really good in a lot of places where you don't hear well, and you can add them to your hearing aids, or you, in some cases, in place of hearing aids. It's just kind of a low-level technology that is very helpful before you even get hearing aids. Were you asked about the effect of hearing loss on your home life? Yeah, so that's on your life at home, work, and school, and when using the phone. So it's really important for a hearing healthcare provider to know where your issues are about hearing. Where's your most difficulty? And because that's having the answers to that, getting a history of that is very helpful in selecting a hearing aid or an assistive device for you. So I guess there are some actual forms that are can be provided, abbreviated profile of hearing aid benefit, or a COSI, client-oriented scale of improvement. So these are forms, or an international outcome of inventory of hearing aids. So these are forms that might be included in your new patient questionnaires that you get. So did a significant other have an opportunity to discuss how your hearing loss affects you? Well, first of all, it's really a good idea if you bring your significant other with you, because sometimes they can amplify some of your issues where you may not be able to articulate it. And also it really helps your spouse to, or significant other, to fully understand hearing loss, and that it's not selective hearing necessarily. And they can learn about the issues of trying to talk to you from the other room, why you can't understand that. So there's a lot of things that a spouse can learn, and that is very helpful to you. So please encourage them to go with you, and hopefully they've had a chance to ask questions of the professional as well. So assuming that hearing aids have been prescribed, and a hearing aid is selected, do you know about the particular types of hearing aids that are available and what was recommended. So there is a behind the ear, which is, if you can see mine, I have a behind the ear on this one. On this side, I have a cochlear implant, but on this side is a hearing aid. So that's a BTE. And then there's another one that's in the ear. Fewer and fewer people seem to have those, but it usually fills the outside, and it fits in the ear, but it fits the cavity there. And then there's in the canal, which that goes really, goes literally into the canal. And then you have kind of like a little wire that helps you to get it in and out. And then there's completely in the canal, or a receiver in the canal. So I'm not seeing a lot of those lately. But then again, I really haven't had very many opportunities to see my hard of hearing people in person and talk to them about that. But I mostly see behind the ear hearing aids, and that is mostly what is used. But if something else is recommended, it's good to understand why was that selected for me and my hearing loss. So ask that question. So were your personal preferences considered regarding style and cost? Okay, there are a lot of people who say, I absolutely do not want to have a behind the ear hearing aid. I want something that goes deep into my canal, and I don't want anybody to see it. So if that's if that's what you want, was your wishes considered? Now, there might be a variety of reasons of why that wouldn't be good for you, and you need to hear that from a professional. So talk to your professional regarding style and cost. And were you asked if you use an iPhone or an Android smartphone? So many of the phones now connect with your hearing aids, and they are like a remote control. So you can adjust volume, and you can also turn on a telecoil, and that's something else we'll talk about in a little bit. If you have a telecoil feature, there's a variety of microphones, 1 and 2 microphones, one that's forward, one that's back. It's really great if you have a microphone that you can turn off when you're in a restaurant, because then you're beginning to eliminate the background noise. And having a remote on your phone is very good if you have a phone. There are other models where you can make all those adjustments just clicking on a button on your phone, on your hearing aid. So, but if you have an iPhone or a smartphone, it's great if you can use that. As a matter of fact, you may decide, knowing that that's available, that you're going to head for that feature. So were all the features of your hearing aid explained to you? So were you told about the benefits of telecoil? That is something that is, telecoils are a little wire that goes into the hearing aid, and it connects with hearing loops and assistive devices very easily. So, and so that you can hear better. Here in Laguna Woods, we have several meeting rooms that have telecoils, that have hearing loops. Sorry, that have a hearing loop, which is for, just to keep it simple, is a wire that is all around the room connected to the PA system, an amplification system, and a microphone. So when somebody speaks in a microphone, the sound goes through the hearing loop, and then magnetically connects to your hearing aid, and you can hear the sound directly in your hearing aid or cochlear implant. So this is wonderful for churches, auditoriums, meetings, because you don't need to borrow an assistive device. You can just go in, sit down, and flip a switch and hear the presenter without background noise. So when I had meetings in Laguna Woods, all the rooms that I used had a hearing loop. And now there are, I've been able to work with management, and we got hearing loops in the Performing Arts Center, in the theater, in the dining room 1 and 2. We have one in the big room in Clubhouse 2, the art room in Clubhouse 1, the boardroom where you can go for board meetings, that is looped. The PC, the computer, personal computer training center is looped. So a lot of people would love to go and learn more about computers. So you can go in there, and if you have a telecoil, just turn on your T-coil, and the speaker who's teaching, you'll be able to hear their voice right in your ear. So that's probably, this is a feature that has been around for over 50 years. It's a very low cost, almost no cost, because it comes with a lot of hearing aids. So if you're getting new hearing aids, please ask for a telecoil. And you could explain to them it's because the community that you live in can utilize that technology. And a lot of people will say, but you don't need T-coil because you've got Bluetooth. Bluetooth does not work in a large area in a meeting room. It's just a one-on-one. So that means your Bluetooth can be connected to your phone, but it cannot be connected to a large area amplification system. So believe it or not, and you can talk to your audiologist, there are hearing aids that offer both Bluetooth and telecoil. So if you, I would suggest that you inquire about that. Okay. So yes, and were you told about any accessories available, such as a remote control? The phone is not the only remote control. There are some that actually have little remote controls that can be utilized. Ken, you got a question? You got a comment?
I have a comment on the telecoil. They can be a little confusing to enable and disable. We actually have our lobby looped so that we can actually, if someone, I always try and get hearing aids with telecoils for people, but actually enabling that can be a little confusing. So we can actually go out in my lobby and I can show them how to do that live in the lobby to a TV set that's looped. So I think that's important if you're doing anything with telecoil, because it can be a little somewhat confusing on how do I get into that and what happens when I do get into that. You can tell it's important to be able to see actually, here's what happens, here's how it sounds, here's what it's doing, so the people understand what it's doing and how to turn that on and off.
Absolutely. Yes, and I use my telecoil an awful lot, and I'm awfully when I'm driving around, Don't tell the police, please. When I'm driving around, I can listen to podcasts, or when I'm shopping and I'm actually listening using telecoil, because I use a neck loop. And so I'm going to explain what a neck loop is in just a moment. And so I turn off the sound, the program, but I forget to change back to a regular microphone. And so I go through the store and the sensors start buzzing and crackling. So then I go, oh, I've got my telecoil on. So there are some experiences that you need to learn, and let's talk to each other about using them. And Ken, you're right. It does take a little bit of training and practice. And yeah. Also, I wanted to tell you about a neck loop. This is a device, and not everybody needs this, but I have a cochlear implant and a hearing aid. So they both connect with telecoil, but there's no one device that controls it. So I have this that I can connect my phone to this telecoil device, put on my T-coil, and I can hear very well. This is available at no charge from California Phones. So California Phones, if you're not familiar with that, California Phones offers a variety of amplified phones and devices and accessories. It's all revolved around telecom. Any telephone devices, they have some accessories that can help you. Also, with a neck loop, not this one, but with one that can be provided for you, you can use a receiver, a telecoil receiver, wherever there is a hearing loop. So those people who have hearing aids, or they don't have hearing aids that don't have a telecoil, they can use a neck loop and a receiver. And generally you go to the ticket booth. In the case of the movie theater, I go to the consumer convenience desk, and I check out a device so that I can connect with their listening system in the theater. So there are devices that you can use. And Alan just put it in the chat box there. Thank you, Alan, for doing that. California Phones, devices for difficulty hearing. So if you're able to, if you're in the chat, you see the chat box down at the bottom, and you see a number next to it, that means that there's a message there. If you click that and open it, and you'll see that he left a message and provides the link to California Phones. Okay. I could do, and I will do more in future programs, or have somebody come on and talk about assistive devices. We just had a really good one a couple meetings ago, but it was focused just on iPhones and devices around the home. So we'll get into that. But carrying on today, for programs designed to reduce background noise, and so you can hear more effectively. Again, this is something that many hearing aids have. They have more than one microphone, and you can turn, for example, the back one off in a restaurant so that you could just hear the conversation in front of you. You can hear better the conversation. Background noise just seems to always be a problem for people with hearing loss, and particularly people with hearing aids and cochlear implants. So having more than one microphone, having the ability to turn it off and reduce the background noise is very, very helpful. Were you asked if your hearing aids fit comfortably? You know, a lot of people say that they never had that conversation with their hearing healthcare provider. So if they don't bring it up, if it feels too tight or feels too loose, or if there's any issues, this is the time to bring it up. Were you shown how to put batteries in your hearing aid? That's really important that you don't go off with hearing aids and don't know how to replace the battery. And were you told where you can buy batteries? So a lot of hearing healthcare providers will actually sell them in the office. That's very convenient. I think places like Costco and Sam's Club do a great job. The prices are very good for the number of batteries you can get. And did you have a talk with them about rechargeable batteries? There are some hearing aids where you just put your hearing aid in the evening in a rechargeable compartment and let them charge overnight. This can be so helpful for people that have dexterity issues. But I do want to say that I think the whole rechargeable battery is sort of in its infancy still, because the battery life won't get you through the whole day. And this is what I mean. So if you're home most of the time, that's not a big problem. But if you if you're away from the home and away from a charger, you cannot replace your battery. You have to go to where there is a charger. So some people carry a charger with them, but 7 hours is what I'm told is a pretty good time with rechargeable batteries. And yes, Ken, you'd like to comment about that?
Yes, that's fairly old information as far as the time, the run time on rechargeables. It's now closer to 20 hours for most manufacturers, and almost any hearing aid nowadays you can get rechargeable, except for the very small ones that go in the ear are still an issue in terms of not being able to be rechargeable. But the best, as far as time, the Signia, their latest hearing aid, has a 38-hour run time per charge. So that's well over a whole day, but it is always an issue. If you don't have your charger with you, you don't have a hearing aid. If you go on a trip and you leave your charger at home, then you have a day's worth of hearing, maybe a day and a half. I do recommend people that travel a lot get a second charger so they keep that in their charger kit, because that alleviates. That's the kind of thing I would do. That's why I've kind of like to really emphasize that. You do have to have the charger. If you have batteries, you can go anywhere and find batteries. Those are I mean, they're available. I've even seen them at like Home Depot and stuff. So the hearing aid batteries are easy to get, but when it's rechargeable, the charger has to be that brand. If you know someone else has a charger, you can't necessarily use it unless it's actually the right model, the right brand. So yeah, it is very important to know that. And one of the things that's really important, you mentioned that they talk about the batteries. When you start talking about the small hearing aids, before I even talk about them, I hand them a battery and a hearing aid to see if they have the dexterity to put that battery in. Otherwise, they say, okay, you can see this is probably not a good idea for you, because you're going to struggle like this every morning. So it is very important to start the conversation off with that dexterity question so you can steer people in the right direction for what's going to work for them. But nowadays, It's rare the hearing aid won't run at least 18 to 20 hours. And if you're doing a lot of Bluetooth streaming, that cuts down the amount of time. That's why Signia has gone to this 38-hour battery, because you can now, if that degrades down by 8 hours because you've been on the phone all day long, you still got over 24 hours on the hearing aid. So, but it's definitely not an issue like it was when it was 8 hours. I mean, you really couldn't get through a day. And that was a real problem a few years ago, but not anymore.
Thank you, Ken. I just want to remind everybody that your mileage may vary in the sense that and where you get your hearing aids, and you need to have that discussion. Somebody that I know, excuse me, got hearing aids about 6 months ago, and discovered too late that the batteries only ran about 7 hours, rechargeables, and got stuck. So, and this is somebody who's experienced in the business, somebody who is an HLAA leader. So I'm just saying is that you need to ask those important questions and understand your mileage may vary, because I use telecoil a lot. It wears the battery down sooner. So that's a whole discussion you need to have with your healthcare professional and make sure that you get what is right for you. Yes, Anne, please comment.
Sorry, I put it in the chat box, but I totally agree with Ken. 80% of the hearing aids sold today are rechargeable, but we do talk to, because dexterity, but also visual issues. And people who sweat, they are water resistant, they are sweat proof, and they're almost waterproof because they're sealed now. So those are not issues. So there's a lot of reasons why people go towards rechargeable, but in the event that we're without electricity or it goes out, you should be prepared if you have a rechargeable hearing aid. So in our office, we have a solar powered light that also has the ability for a USB port, and we have solar powered battery packs, and we recommend that people consider those options and keep them charged so that you're ready in case the electricity goes out, which over the weekend, I guess in Portland, it was out for the whole weekend. I have a girlfriend there, so you just never know.
Wow.
Stay prepared.
Yes. That's lots to think about. Okay. Right. Let's go into dispensing. Were you told how to keep earwax out of the sound bore of the ear mold or wherever you have? So that's sort of like maintenance, because if you do get some collection of wax in your hearing aid, the part that goes in your ear, you need some help in how to maintain that so that the clarity of, you can hear clarity of speech. And I guess there's, Anne or Ken, I guess there's some wax guards. Do people still use wax guards?
The wax guards are built into a lot, almost all the hearing aids now. And that's a little removable piece that if you get wax down that hole that the sound comes out of, it can actually make it seem like the hearing aid's broken, like nothing's coming out, or it can make it gurgle, or it can make it distorted. When that thing's, and it's important for your hearing aid professional to explain that to you so you know, okay, if that's happening, I can fix it. And that that you're provided with the little pieces to take that little wax guard out and put a new one in that doesn't have wax in it anymore, so you get rid of what's clogging up your hearing aid. And that's something all hearing aids have that issue, but just some people's ears create more wax than others, and the people who have very waxy ears tend to have those clogged quite often.
Thank you, Ken. All right. Yes. Okay. Have you been told about using a dehumidifier box for night storage? So there are actually some electrical boxes, and there's actually desiccant jars where you can put your hearing aids in at night so that they dry out. Can extend the life of your hearing aid, and just by drying out the moisture every night and get ready for the next day. Not everybody these days, if you have a profound hearing loss like me, very likely you have a tube, and I can actually see moisture in my tube sometimes, especially on a hot day, or if I've been doing a lot of vacuuming or whatever. And so I know that I need to put my hearing aid in a dryer, and that will help not only your hearing, because sometimes it actually dampens the sound, but it also helps to extend the life of the hearing aid, because if your tube is getting that much moisture, it's getting into your hearing aid as well. So using a drying box or desiccant tube, and please talk to your hearing health care professional about that. They can provide you with what you need. The recharging boxes most of the time provide a drying effect overnight, so that may be all you need if you have rechargeable hearing aids. So we're talking about the comfort of going back. Have you been talked to about coming back for regular checkups? A lot of times people don't realize that when they get their hearing aids and they get fitted, that it's part of the program for them to go back, especially in the short term, and eventually spread the time. But you should go back as many times as you need for adjustments, for fit, comfort. Sometimes you need to hear things a little bit better, and it could be tweaked. So it's really important to do that, and understand it's just part of buying a hearing aid. And you should definitely, I have all my pieces looked at every 6 months. Every 6 months. And that way it gives you a chance to check in with your hearing healthcare provider. And if you haven't had an annual exam, that's probably a good time to have a checkup. Make sure that you're all up to date with all of your adjustments. And also, sometimes your hearing aid just needs to be professionally cleaned. So many hearing healthcare providers provide that service right there in their office. All right. Let's talk about real ear measurement, because I don't want to run out of time. Real ear is a test that is done with your new hearing aid, and what it does is that verifies that the prescription that's coming through the hearing aid is what has been prescribed for you. So it's a real ear measurement test, and it verifies that the hearing aid is not too loud. It verifies any features you have, such as directional microphones and a telecoil. So it's really important if you can make sure that your dispenser has real ear measurement to verify all the settings, because a lot of times, especially if you're new to hearing aids, you're not the best person to decide if you're hearing it properly or if it's adjusted properly. Ken or Anne, would you like to make any comment about real ear measurements? Are we good?
Yeah, I think you're good. It's basically it's putting a little microphone at the end of your hearing aid to measure how the hearing aid is performing while it's in your ear. So if you don't put a little microphone in, all the measurements are being based on a standard. They're not personalized for you, where we can verify, yes, the hearing aid is working the way it should be for you. That's the main purpose of real ear measurement, and it's been around for 30 years. I couldn't fit a hearing aid without it. So I think it's a very important step for verification.
Personally, I think it's more important. That's a test in quiet. It's more important doing the noise testing, because that's where you're going to have your big issues. So it's all important. All the testing to know that this is set up properly for you is good, but the testing in noise is really where you're going to get the most out of your hearing aids, when someone's actually fine-tuned them to you in noise, so that when you do walk into that restaurant, yes, it's going to be obnoxiously loud, but you can still follow the conversation. That's a big thing with hearing aids, either in restaurants or in family gatherings. Is things get noisy, you still want to hear.
Thank you, Ken. Okay. Were any hearing aid orientation sessions offered? So I just want to say that if an audiologist or hearing aid dispenser recommends coming to the Mission Viejo chapter for information and support, that would fulfill that. That's it's not exactly hearing aid orientation sessions, not exactly, but you want to continue your education. And I find, and people who have been coming to meetings for a long time, I know Howard's come, Sarah, Nancy Hodes, quite a few of you, Jeff Chess, I'm reading names here, know that the more you expose yourself to information, the better you are with your own hearing loss. You can't learn everything you need to know in a hearing aid dispenser's office or an audiologist's office. They just don't have the time, and they don't have your experience, but you can talk to other people in the situation, and they can share their experience with their hearing loss and their equipment. So it's always a good idea if you can get a referral to a support group. We also have here in Orange County, we have the Orange County City of Orange, HLAA City of Orange chapter, who currently is meeting about every other month, and they meet in person, but they meet like in restaurants and picnics, and their meeting place is not available. So if you'd like to get on their email list, I can, if you just email me, I'll make sure that you get their notices as well. So there is hearing loss support. Their group is a little bit younger. They're working adults as opposed to retired adults. So, did you get you should be getting a receipt. Oh, I forget what the name of it is. I didn't write it down. You need to get a full disclosure form regarding trial periods, warranties, protections for you, and you should get that with your receipt when you put your 50% down for your hearing aids. And you should also get information on a card or a piece of paper that has the make, model, and serial number of your hearing aids. It's very important. And were you told the price of your hearing aid? Well, Boy, oh boy, that's a funny question, because I'm sure everybody gets the price of hearing aid before they leave. And also be sure and keep the name of your hearing healthcare provider available. I have talked to people who says they don't remember the name of the person they went to. And so I'm trying to send them back, because that's the best place to go if you have an issue, is go to the person who provided the hearing aid. And in some cases, it's essential, because there is such thing as called locked hearing aids. I think there may be fewer of them, but locked hearing aids are hearing aids that are sold through a provider, where the software is exclusive to that provider and others in that network. So it can't be taken to anybody else. So there's, I'm trying to think, Real Ear, Miracle Ear, those are locked hearing aids. So if you buy a hearing aid from a company called Miracle Ear or Belltone, those are locked hearing aids. And what that means is you can only return to a Belltone or a Real Ear provider to have any kind of service or adjustment. And that doesn't give you all the options that you need to have, especially if you're traveling and if something happens, you've got to seek out a Real Ear or Belltone provider. So it's just better to, first of all, be sure you have all the information, and just be aware of locked hearing aids. That is something that you could ask the provider if what they're giving you is a locked hearing aid, and ask for something else. I'm just saying, give yourself more choices in the case of an emergency. Okay. I would work with a dispenser, with a hearing aid provider that offers more than one make and model, brand name of a hearing aid. So find out if they deal with more than one brand. And I think if they only deal with one brand, it's probably a locked hearing aid. Okay. And you've got to make sure that you get everything in writing. How much the hearing aid is, how much is expected on delivery, how long the warranty is, and if it's if they say the warranty, yes, but if the trial period is good for 45 days, don't wait. And you have a problem, don't wait till the 45th day. I'd say get in there by the 44th day or the 43rd. If you know you're having a problem, you should see them as soon as possible, and try to have the issue remedied. But if it can't be remedied, be sure you have it returned and ask for your refund. After that trial period, you won't get a refund. You won't get a refund. Okay. Okay. That's about it for now. I want to let's take the next 10 minutes or so to answer any questions you might have. And I'm going to stop sharing that. Just to let everybody know that I am going to attach this to an email that I'm going to send out later this afternoon when the video finishes processing with Zoom. And I will give you a link to this video and also an attachment of this checklist. So, any questions? Anne, you have a comment or a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to remind people that they can go to the state of California's website and look under hearing aid dispensers and audiologists and look and see if there's any actions taken against anybody. There is a person in our area who's had their license revoked. And I just had a patient come in last week that told me that that person is still working in the area. So I just want to advise you that as a consumer, you can go on to the Hearing Aid Dispensing Speech Pathology Board website. Tony's got that link, but to protect yourself, you just need to be aware that there are people out there that are not necessarily as ethical as they should be. And I feel a responsibility to you as a consumer to make sure that you are protected.
Really good point, Anne. Thank you very much. Yes.
And we did have one of the patient's son came to a former meeting of ours and talk about getting money taken from them. That what happened is the person took the credit card and without knowing was charging the patient's credit card erroneously, and the son got a hold of it and went after the member for this. This is all public knowledge. I'm not speaking out of tone here, but you just need to really be careful about where you're going. And so I know that Tony has had Paul Sanchez from the board come and speak at our meetings. And it's important that we remember that information is key. So I totally thank you, Tony, for all that you're doing with that.
I have a question.
Yes, I have been involved with Paul Sanchez about a person in our community who had their license revoked and continues to practice. So I don't know if we're thinking of the same person. Maybe we could talk offline. And
it is. It's the same person.
Boy. Okay. So so maybe maybe I should contact Paul Sanchez again and make a consumer complaint and let them know. Okay, and I also too, I know how to look up that information. So if anybody wants information on a provider to see if their license has been revoked or any kind of suspension, I'd be happy to get that information for you. Yes, Jane?
Yes, I was actually hoping that you were going to be addressing over-the-counter hearing aids. I've seen an audiologist for about 5 years and have been prescribed hearing aids from him. I've proceeded to lose my hearing aids. And I'm wondering, my hearing loss is mild, and I'm wondering what I should be looking for in maybe looking at over-the-counter hearing aids. Are you there? I can't hear anything.
Well, I will say one thing about over-the-counter. We do provide some over-the-counter, but over-the-counter means, I mean, you've been through the whole process of being fit for hearing aids.
Right.
Over-the-counter means, here's your hearing aids, you're on your own. So I don't think very many people could just take a pair of hearing aids and go through the process of getting them, for one, just fit for your ears, just comfortable in your ears. That's the first thing you have to do. I have personally tried earbuds before, some very expensive ones. I could never get them to fit my ears well.
What was it called?
These were just earbuds. These are simple earbuds. I couldn't get that to them.
Right.
I've talked to a bunch of people who have tried it, and very few people can just get them comfortable in their ear. So that's the first thing. And then you have to go through their process, usually through an app on a phone that adjusts those to your what that thing thinks is your loss, even without a real hearing test. There's no calibrated hearing test. They just take their best guess at what you need in a hearing aid. So you're pretty much on your own between fitting them and going through their little process to somehow adjust them to your hearing loss. So the people I've taught have come in and asked me that have been through the process of actually getting hearing aids have all said, oh, I don't see how that's going to work, because they've been through the process. They know how involved it is, how much of how much work's involved between the hearing aid person and the person with the hearing aids, how much interaction there is to get them fine-tuned to your unique hearing loss. So that's the thing. I would love to do a talk here on them, because we are going to be providing them in our office with a little more help than you'd get buying them from a pharmacy or from a drugstore or something. So at least we can get them in your ears right and help you go through their process. And for people with a mild loss, depending on what your loss is like, they may be able to help you for less cost. The other thing people don't understand also is there's two types of over-the-counter hearing aids. There's a more stringent type where you have to go through an FDA process and get qualified as an over-the-counter hearing aid. Another one where you just have to say, yep, we do that, and that's good enough. And there's nobody really looking over your shoulder if those hearing aids are really what you say or what the FDA has specified for this second type of hearing aid. So they've added a lot of confusion where you don't know if you're spending $500 or $1,000 for a pair of over-the-counter. You don't know whether you're getting these ones that are actually FDA, they've gone through the approval process, or whether it's a very simple one. But so I wish it was less complicated. I wish the government had said, this is one thing, this is how they're done, but they left it for a bunch of businesses to make it very confusing, unfortunately.
I wanted to share my screen with you. I just one other thing here about over-the-counter. Okay. If you would write this down, this website, hearingloss.org, that is the HLAA website, and you will get, oh boy, you can download 2 pieces of information about considering over-the-counter hearing aids, and there's also there we go. So you could go to hearingloss.org /OTC. And Alan, if you could put that in the chat box, that would be great, if you're able to do that. And there's also another tip sheet that you can print out. And both of those are available if you go to hearingloss.org OTC. But just echoing kind of what Ken is saying is people are sort of lost with these over-the-counter aids, because how do you know you can benefit by even a low-level hearing aid? How do you know that the problem you have is hearing loss and not earwax? Or maybe you should check that out first. But and if you do have a hearing loss, what level do you have? Which of these aids is best? And so many hearing aids require personal adjustments. And how are you going to do that for yourself? I mean, I think you should see a professional just to see if you would benefit from a hearing loss, and then maybe look at over-the-counter aids. But I got to tell you, I've looked at some of the prices, and they're all kind of all over the place. And not everything that you can buy over the counter has an FDA recommendation or approval. So, you know, you may be buying something that doesn't work for you. It would be a waste of money. It doesn't hurt to look into it and just see if you would be a candidate for that. But you probably need some help with a professional. And many of them will work with you using an over-the-counter aid.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to thank, I'm going to have to close. I want to thank Alan Katsura for helping, assisting today in our show, our meeting. Anne Mundell Noel, thank you. Ken Post, thank you very much for lending your expertise. And I also want to thank Joe, our captioner, who is captioning all the way over the airs from Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. So thank you, Joe, for that. And of course, I do want to mention again about Captain Call, who helps sponsor this meeting and pays for pays the captioner. Wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving. Be sure to get out and vote if you haven't done that yet. And we will not have a meeting in December. I have to take that month off, but we'll be back in January. And if you're on our email list, you'll get the notices. So have great holidays. Thank you. Bye-bye.